You have awakened to find yourself in Noir Alley. I'm your host, Eddie Muller. Or at least, I claim to be. I might be someone else altogether. There's really no way for you to know. In fact, you may not even be who you think you are. I'm not trying to unnerve you. I'm just getting you ready for today's film. My name is Julia Ross, a 1945 offering from Columbia Pictures. Nina Foch, in one of her first starring roles, plays a young woman in England who answers an advert for a secretarial job, only to awaken in a seaside mansion with an entirely different identity. It's a nightmarish scenario in which our heroine has a brisk 65 minutes to get to the bottom of her predicament. The gaslight-style storyline and the setting may seem more like gothic melodrama than noir, but for me, the film fits right in with one of noir's dominant themes, the crisis of identity. Noir is filled with stories of men and women struggling to reclaim their identity due to amnesia, losing their identities to schizophrenia, or having their identities stolen for some nefarious reason. Such plots are a cornerstone of noir fiction. The script is based on a 1941 novel called The Woman in Red by prolific British mystery writer Anthony Gilbert. In another case of identities not always being what they seem, Gilbert was the pen name of Lucy Beatrice Malleson, who wrote more than 60 mystery novels, many of them featuring an extraordinary character named Arthur Crook, an eccentric barrister with a penchant for breaking the law to save his clients. Screenwriter Muriel Roy Bolton, also a woman, drastically altered the book, keeping only its first half. Jettisoned entirely was the character of Arthur Crook, who dominates the book's second half and solves a much bigger mystery, one involving World War II espionage. None of that appears in this more tightly honed movie version. My Name is Julia Ross is an extraordinary example of what could be accomplished by studios' B units. The film effectively recreates London and the Cornwall seaside without straying more than a few miles from Gower Street, the Hollywood home of Columbia Pictures. Credit for that goes to director Joseph H. Lewis, who called the script damn near perfect, mainly because it gave him a chance to show off his talent and get noticed by the studio bosses. Lewis often referred to himself as an artist without diploma, meaning he was entirely self-taught as a filmmaker. Only a few years earlier, he'd conned his way into an editing job without ever having spliced two pieces of film together. But Lewis was a quick study who soaked up everything and had boundless enthusiasm. His most valuable quality was fearlessness. During the several years he spent making no-budget westerns, he'd constantly find inventive ways to enliven pedestrian material, whether it was with dynamic compositions, complex camera movements, or startling transitions. Lewis was a natural and instinctive storyteller. On this film, he worked for the first time with an equally inventive collaborator, director of photography Burnett Guffey, who, like Lewis, was just coming into his own. He'd been a camera operator for many years, but had only recently begun getting DP credit on a string of forgettable Bs. Julia Ross would put both men on the map. Columbia gave them a $150,000 budget and a 12-day shooting schedule, typical for a B. But Lewis felt they were making something a cut above the usual, and he unapologetically spent an extra $25,000 and added 8 days to the schedule, not something Columbia's production boss, Max Arno, ever tolerated. But the ultimate boss, studio chief Harry Cohn, loved what he saw in Lewis's dailies, and he told Arno to lay off the new kid. Cohn's instincts were spot on. The film premiered in New York as a B, but the reviews were so strong that in many markets it was soon the top draw, being presented as the A half of the double bill. Co-starring Dame Mae Whitty and George Macready as a highly suspicious mother and son, here's one of the most gripping and cleverly made B movies of the 1940s. My Name is Julia Ross.